Hey everyone, this is Cameron from Renegade Animation on renegadepopculture.com. If you like what we do, give us a like, a follow, and a rating on Apple Podcasts. Give us a like and a follow on everywhere else you listen to podcasts. We are everywhere. That way, we can keep doing what we love, and that's talk about animation. And now, on with the show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Renegade Animation on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'll be your captain for this evening. Joining me, as always, is the animation guru himself, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And today, we have an episode that I'm sure Cameron has been chomping at the bit to record. This is our review for Netflix Animation's The Sea Beast. But first, speaking of Netflix, we have one trailer to discuss for a highly anticipated movie. Cameron, what do you got?
We're going to talk about the film that will cap off the unjustly hated The Rise of the TMNT theories that showed up like a few years ago, and it came and went with 2 seasons because terrible fans acted terrible. Big shock. And now we finally have this new movie. And it's meant to cap off the show. And obviously, if you've seen the trailer, it shows us Casey and the Krang invading the Earth. You know, finally. Man, this show is a treat. I am so sad that this show got thrown under the bus.
It is unfortunate because I had to do a little bit of research just to confirm when the show premiered compared to when the 2012 show ended. And it's like, yeah, there's only like a 1-year difference. So while I don't agree with like fans who are like, Blarg, this isn't my Turtles, I can kind of understand only because the difference is like about a year between the 2 shows. However, as we've implied, that doesn't give you the excuse to act like dicks.
Seriously, it's a different art style. Every TMNT incarnation has had a different art style. I'm sure a lot of you people complaining about this Rise of the TMNT art style were complaining about the TV budget CGI that was used for the 2012 series. You can't just contradict yourself like that. Don't be a hypocrite.
Exactly.
Like, y'all freaking love the 2012 show now. So, listen, yes, maybe there could have been a little more time in between both incarnations instead of just a year in between. But y'all just hated this thing day one before even seeing a full episode. And yes, it's goofy. Oh, wait a minute. You mean like the original show? The original show is corny as hell. And if you go far enough into the show's run, the show makes fun of itself. Like, literally, specials like that Turtles Forever animated special that had the 2003 and the 1980s versions team up, poked fun at the original 80s incarnation. Like, I remember one of my favorite gags from it was, oh no, April's in trouble. How do you know? We just know. And, or like in the original show, Krang and Shredder were talking to one another, and it's just like, how about we kidnap April? And he's like, well, it's been 2 days since we've kidnapped her last. I don't see what's the problem there. Or something like that. Like, the original show was already goofy. If you wanted something dark, you'd go to like the comic book that the show was not based on. The show wasn't even the same as the comic. The comic was dark.
The history of this franchise is kind of bizarre.
It's gone up and down in tones. Even the 2003 show was able to balance out like really dark moments and complex themes with some goofy elements while being on 4Kids who were the distributors of this 2003 version. And they were able to put in a scene where they lop off the Shredder's head. They were able to keep that. Apparently they were like, okay, we let that slide, but we can't let this horrifying zombie plot line that happens during one episode air ever again. But they let it happen. 4Kids, the higher ups of that company that ruined a ton of great shows, let that slide. And listen, I haven't seen a lot of the 2012 version. The original reason I wanted to check out that show was because Lewis Black played a villain there. But I'm sure that show is also just as goofy and has its moments of complexity. And yes, the rise of the TMNT's tone is definitely a little more goofy. But do you see the action?
The action, I haven't started watching Rise yet, but just in this trailer alone, the action looks incredible. Just as a reminder, this is the same team that worked on Glitch Tech.
And they also worked on that Lego Monkey King series. They are known for dynamic action. The show has probably the best action of any Turtles cartoon.
So I have no idea why Turtles fans are turning their nose at this when they should be celebrating shows with this level of kinetic energy and action.
I don't know, man. Like, fans are just a weird mistake that we all now have to deal with. And I hate that. I don't want to deal with the bad fans. I just want to deal with the good ones. And yet the bad ones somehow get all of the attention. And I don't care that, oh, they changed Splinter. Okay, well, you have like 3 other shows and or films to where you can get the Splinter that you want. Okay, well, there's no Shredder in Rise of the TMNT until, or the Foot Clan is in Rise of the TMNT, but Shredder is like late game villainy, and well, that's fine. It just made him more of an imposing threat.
Exactly.
I like the new mutants that they all have to encounter. They have a great new lore building origin for the Turtles, and the voice cast is great, especially for the villains. And they also do a Pirate of Penzance parody, so I'm going to support that. So I'm happy that they're getting this movie. What I'm not happy about is that in between this film's production and when it was originally announced, Paramount decided, wait a minute, we could have our own streaming service. So now Paramount Plus has both seasons of Rise of the TMNT. Netflix only has one. And the movie's going to be on the quote-unquote inferior service. That is so weird. I don't know why Paramount didn't just buy the movie from Netflix.
It must have been some contractual obligation. I also don't understand why Netflix isn't just distributing both seasons. There are plenty of shows that are on multiple streaming services. I don't really understand why this one only is completed on one.
I'm fully looking forward to this film. We're in like a really good year for licensed features, like based off of TV shows. Like we got the Bob's Burgers movie, and then we had the Beavis and Butthead film, and now we have this one. I'm definitely interested to see how they work with Casey, because he was also absent from the original show. The action looks good. It's by a very talented group of passionate animators, and you should give it a watch. I'm a huge fan of this version, and I can't wait to talk about this in August.
August 5th is when this hits Netflix, and I am very excited.
Right. So let's talk about the giant sea monster in the room as we talk about Netflix's newest animated feature that they should have given a wider theatrical release.
Seriously.
The Sea Beast. For many that may not know, this is by Chris Williams, who was a Disney veteran. He worked on stuff like Moana and Big Hero 6. The animation was done by Sony Pictures Imageworks, which, are the same studio that did a lot of the stuff for like Warner Brothers and, obviously Sony. The plot of the film has us follow a seafaring monster hunter named Jacob, voiced by Carl Urban, which I am sure everyone knows from The Boys right now.
And he is so good.
He's on a ship that's run by the daring and legendary Captain Crow, voiced by Jared Harris. In this world, there are ships that go out and under the name of the royal kingdom and the patriarchy, go out and hunt sea monsters to make the world safer for the humans. One day, after a return home from stopping another sea monster, Jacob encounters a young girl named Maisie Brumble, voiced by Zaris Angel Harder, who is a big fan of the hunters and wants to join Captain Crow and his crew. Of course, Jacob, being a sensible person, is like, no, we're not going to let a kid join the crew. After being told by the king and queen that, oh, we're going to cut loose the hunters so we can have this big, obviously not going to work military contraption to take down monsters. Which that was one of my favorite moments where Captain Crow broke down why the ship wouldn't work. And then he goes, and the captain's an ass. I was really shocked to hear a curse word in this movie. I love it. As they go on a final journey to hunt down the Red Bluster, this big, infamous sea creature that took Captain Crow's eye, Maisie stows away on the ship and, of course, sweet talks Captain Crow and just being like, yeah, I'm going to join your crew. You're awesome. And we're going to take down these monsters. And, of course, Captain Crow's like, I like her. She's all vinegar. I love a lot of this lingo in this film. And of course, they encounter the Red Bluster and almost die, with Jacob and Maisie getting separated from Captain Crow and end up on an island with the Red Bluster. It's up to them to get back to their people and maybe learn a little history about the other side of these creatures and their history with the humans. Listen, Netflix is in a really crummy spot right now because of its higher-ups. All of these canceled projects, people that are laid off. It's frustrating. It sucks to be making a show and a film right now when the higher-ups are just slipping and falling on their face with all of these decisions that they've been making because of that recent stock report of them not making all the money. I get that. But this film wouldn't have existed without Netflix. And that's such a double-edged sword, per se.
It is.
What's maddening is because this film and all these other films that are coming out are being released while all this nonsense on Netflix is happening. Because the Sea Beast is really friggin' good.
It just became my number one movie of the year. Like, it just kind of snuck its way up to the top. I was expecting this movie to be just a really good swashbuckling adventure. I didn't expect it to be one of the best animated movies, or honestly, just movies that I've seen in like the past 20 years.
Well, first off, before we really dive into it all, it's really cool to see a very straightforward, in a sense that there's no real like swaying of what it is, an action adventure film. Like, it's not super comedy driven. There are jokes, but it's mostly like action and fighting these giant sea monsters. And it's definitely like it's a film that definitely hits an all age group. It's not intensely focused on one group of viewers, which, you know, if it was, cool, that's fine. It's great to see an animated film that is like just action adventure, because we don't get a lot of those. And a lot of the times when we did get them from major studios, they had to be fairly comedy driven.
I think the closest in terms of setting the tone on like in a modern animated feature would have been Into the Spider-Verse, which I even think was rated PG-13. Generally, in terms of the tone, this is closer to like Pirates of the Caribbean than even something like Chris Williams' other work, like Moana or Big Hero 6.
It doesn't have the same synergy that like a lot of the DreamWorks action adventure films had. It definitely has vibes of like How to Train Your Dragon, but we've also seen stories before that of the whole like, maybe the monsters aren't as bad and the humans are the problem. It gave me vibes of like that Sinbad film DreamWorks made before they officially stopped making 2D animated features.
I get those kind of vibes too.
But not as like corny and comedy driven again. It's very mature. It has a body count. Like, you see people die and ships sink. And there are dead sea monsters all over the bottom of the ocean. It's not hiding away the details of how dangerous this world is, or how dangerous the world is portrayed by the hierarchy, but we'll get into that in a little later.
Mm-hmm.
I just like that there was just action. It seems like we don't get a lot of good action animated features from the US. Overseas, you get them like every other day. You could throw a rock into a lake and would hit like 10 different Japanese animated action films, especially franchise films like Demon Slayer or Jujutsu Kaisen and what have you. It feels way more refreshing because of the US animation scene. And I'm not saying it's like, oh, it makes it worse that we don't get this much variety, but it is nice that we get variety when we get it.
I really hope that this movie kind of emboldens more Western filmmakers to be like, yeah, there is an audience for movies like this that don't need to be so comedy forward. And we trust our audience to just go with the story and follow these characters without having to include so much pathos. Like, to be frank, a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as much as I love those movies, they can sometimes be a little too tongue-in-cheek and not quite sincere enough. At least not the way this movie is.
It's very like subdued with its humor. It's not trying to be like How to Train Your Dragon, where like I love How to Train Your Dragon's fantasy world, but there's a more modern lingo style to its dialogue. There are more modern shorthands to expand on the world of How to Train Your Dragon. How the characters talk is very modern. And I'm not bothered by that because they execute it in a way that makes it like enjoyable. There's a more timeless feel to the dialogue and mood and atmosphere of how this film approaches its world building and how characters talk to one another. There's only real like one moment where they make a reference to another piece of pop culture with when they encounter that little blue monster and are trying to get away from the eggs in the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, Jacob makes a very obvious aliens reference, but it's also like, it makes sense for this world that there are obviously stories about sea monsters that, you know, they may have edited the truth about these monsters a little. Just saying. There's no push to try to modernize anything. It's set in this world of pirates, and that's all you're really going to get. And I like that. It's refreshing to see that in a animated feature in the US. The way that they make these battles happen, this really needed a theatrical release.
I was just going to say, I would have killed to see this on the big screen in Dolby, like the huge screen and like the giant speakers and just like the whole deluxe experience. This movie would have made a killing. There have already been a handful of movies that people have embraced with open arms. And I feel like this would have been one of them if given like the right resources.
And that's the problem with Netflix. They're putting money into getting original films and shows. They're just not putting the money in to marketing or even trying to give some of these films a wider release. And yes, this one did get a limited theatrical release. But when you see limited theatrical release, that usually means New York and California. Where so it's lucky that the only other time you see a Netflix film in a theater is if it's like a small horror film or something that they're really pushing for awards season. That's why you got to see like Coda from Apple Plus or Don't Look Up or like The Irishman and what have you. It's really a bummer because even though the TV I watched this on was very big, this would have killed on like an IMAX screen. I think this would have made a good amount of cash given a bigger theatrical run. Maybe even something like a G Kids Fathom event kind of situation. It's got these big visuals that are just crying for a theater, and how the shots are angled and the dynamic action. It's also just fun to see a pirate film or like a seafaring adventure, because we don't get a lot of those anymore. If we do get a pirate film, it's usually Pirates of the Caribbean, or they save the money for like a streaming series. I mean, like these big bombastic action pirate films that we used to get before. What was that one in the 90s that basically
Cutthroat Island?
Yeah, that film killed the pirate genre. so hard. And that's why like the Pirates of the Caribbean film, like when the first one came out, everyone was like, I don't know, man. The last time we got a pirate film, it was that Cutthroat Island one. And that one wasn't good and it bombed hard. But Cutthroat Island was probably going to die on the vine no matter what, because it just the whole production of that thing. Ugh. Here, it's like, I love the theatrical animation scene in the US. We're still getting a ton of great stuff. But when everything feels like it's just a comedy, it just makes something like Sea Beast stand out more. And they don't skimp on the action either. There are a good couple of monsters and fighting the ships and people running up. And of course, since you have giant monsters, you have one sequence where you have like the big giant crab fight Red. And that's a lot of fun. They find some really creative camera angles to make that all work. And I'm going to assume that's from a really good like team of storyboard artists and like working with the director to be like, how can we make this look good? Because if this was just like a static fight sequence like that you see in a lot of TV made productions, because, you know, they're not given either the time, the budget, and what have you to make it all work, it just looks so cool. I love that there's this big grand action set piece after set piece. I just love it.
It's hard to pick a favorite out of all these set pieces because they're all done so well. But I think a great tone setter for the film, the opening sequence.
The best set piece to introduce the world of your film.
Exactly. So let's get into the characters, because these two, our main lead, Jacob and Maisie, voiced by Carl Urban and Zaris Angel Hader, are excellent.
Carl Urban as Jacob is so good. I haven't seen too much of Carl Urban in things outside of The Boys and what was it, Dread?
Yep.
But I like him. He brings a very likable charm where there's just enough edge for him to be imposing and like the well-known monster hunter that the books say he is. But he's got a lot of charm. And I was very happy to see that he was able to be funny, be a little goofy, and bring a comedic edge to the character. Because I'm sure he got kind of typecasted with Dread, and then his character on The Boys being very much like, whatever, just kill the heroes. We'll just get it done. And I like Jared Harris. He brings a very weathered, experienced monster hunter vibe to his character. And he has a few very good lines where he says like, aye, and cross the T's. I love a bit of dialogue when they fight the Brickleback creature at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. A lot of the dialogue is just really well done.
I think this is the first real big feature film performance for Zaris, and I think she does a great job. Child characters are so finicky to make work. They are either very boilerplate or they can be really annoying. There's a very hard balance in how to make this work. But with good writing and a good backstory for her to be the child of two monster hunters who fell in a battle, like, and who knows how long ago that was. She brings this like energy and like fan vibe to like when she meets Jacob and Captain Crow, but I never found her obnoxious or grating.
Me neither. I love how right away she already has agency and a drive to basically just go beyond her orphanage. She was clearly born for adventure. Her introduction is just kind of perfect to set up the rest of her arc.
Right. They pace her arc well. Like when they release Red during the first major encounter and you get that great shot of Jacob and Maisie almost at the surface, and they look down and they see Red just looking up at them from below. Great scene. I wish I wasn't going to the beach soon after seeing that scene. Because I would hate to be in the ocean and see that below me. It's like, oh, okay. You can tell like through the dialogue of this movie how they pace it out to have Maisie be the first to realize like, you know, something's up, and Jacob to still be the stalwart. Things are like they are because the books tell us. And I love that whole symbolic gesture of the books will outlast all of us. So what kind of stories do we want to leave for the next generation? I love that because that's a big issue. We have a ton of historically inaccurate books.
You know what they say, history is written by the winners.
And that's what's so good about this film. It's taking that and running with it. Because you find out, spoilers, the kings and queens of the lands before wrote the history of the monsters being these big, bad threats when, well, as Maisie says, they live in the ocean. We're hunting after them. They're just doing what they're doing by attacking back at us.
I am a little curious, like, exactly how far back this monarchy goes, because it has to have been long enough for like generations of hunters to believe this propaganda.
At least been 2 to 3 generations, because Captain Crow says, like, I'm a monster hunter like my dad, and he's a monster hunter like his dad. So at least 100, 200 years, like you said.
Seems reasonable.
So, and by that point in time, it's just apparently common knowledge for everyone to see monsters and as like the big bad threats, when it's like, you know, maybe they aren't. And I like that. I love that this film tackles the themes of fear mongering and propaganda. Not to say it's like the first one to ever do it. I'm not saying that.
Not only is this not the first, but I can already kind of tell they're going to compare this to How to Train Your Dragon in terms of how a major plot of that franchise is like turning the expectations of humans versus dragons completely on its head. I don't want to say it takes like a more mature approach, it just goes one step beyond to actually say like all this stuff about humans versus sea monsters, yeah, that's completely made up.
A very complex film, and whether they timed it or not, or meant to release it or not during these very stressful times, it's a timely movie.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when movies get released during certain periods of time, and then it's like, oh my gosh, it hit at the right moment, whether they meant it or not.
That's the thing with animation too, like because the process is much longer than live action, there's no way to know what specifically they were thinking when they were even like writing the story.
It takes like 4 or so years to make one animated feature, and longer depending on if you're like Phil Tippett, who made Mad God, which took 30, but that's a different film for a different time. And even though it has its funny moments, that little blue monster, well, blue, is very funny. Carl Urban has a lot of the better jokes aimed at him and his stubbornness. I love when they're like going to the ocean and he goes on one side of the monster and he's just like, I need you to go right. And the monster just not having it with him, just not listening to him. I love how much personality they give these monsters. Like the Brickleback, very straightforward, very, I'm a living creature and I'm going to be defending myself and attacking people that attack me. The Red Bluster, or Red in this case, very much like this worn, living, King Kong-like entity.
The eyes are where basically all of her emotions are, well, displayed.
Right. And it's not like this is the most super complex animated film of all time. Working in animation is all about the right choices. And the fact that all of her personality can be seen through the eyes is really smart, because you can tell when she's just like upset or very like, I don't quite know how to react to these humans. The giant crab has a great moment of like, I'm going to eat this boat, and this human, Red, pops up and he's like, oh, just let's go with the boat. and then like when Red grabs onto the claw, he's just like, oh boy, here we go. And like how the yellow monsters that were on the land with the eggs buried underground,
they kind of look like armadillos.
I think the animation references are more like walruses or seals. Like Red also has kind of a reference to like a giant seal or walrus like mammal, just from how her fins are positioned when she's on land. It's very distinct. I mean, this is good animation. This is taking references from real life and real animals to shape these big, larger than life, fantastical creatures. That's why Blue acts like a dog. It's shorthand for creatures animation and mannerisms. That was what went into a lot of How to Train Your Dragon, animated the titular dragons.
Toothless was basically either some people view him as a dog, others a cat. The animators take like all of those references, they incorporate those into the character to relate to the audience.
I talked to one of the animators. They combine basically a little bit of a dog and a bit of a cat into Toothless. And that's why there's just so much personality in this film. You can tell who everyone is by their looks, by their movements, by their designs. Like, who is the first mate?
Sarah Sharp, voiced by Marianne Jean-Baptiste.
She's great, by the way. I love her character. You can tell that she's seen some action with the peg leg, the stern visual look, all the weapons that are on the bed. I love that sequence where she's cleaning the bed. She's like, okay, I'm going to put a gun on this part of the belt, the knife here, knife here, knife here, throws an axe and a mace and a club into a piece of wood hanging on the wall. And I love that little sequence at the beginning before they fight the Brickleback, where she pulls out a thing of alcohol or whiskey. They don't really say. It doesn't really matter. You know what it is.
Yep.
And she's like, you know what they say? If not now, we might not be able to do so later. Even if the other crew members don't get as much personality, they still give them like a good quirk or a trait to work off of. I love Piper. His entire thing is the bagpipes and to give everyone a war cry, a war battle song. And he has no lines, but the little sounds he makes with the bagpipe.
Really all you need.
And you can tell who everyone else is by how they're designed and how they look. It's really smart art direction and really good character designs. You really have to make those two things work, or else it's going to be really weird. I don't know entirely what the budget for this film is. Everything looks great. The water physics look amazing. There are a ton of people in this movie, in the backgrounds and the foregrounds. They spent a lot of resources to make this world look lively, and that takes a lot of money. That's why a lot of smaller productions have very empty worlds or very limited shots of like, okay, we'll have one crowd shot here, but very empty areas here, 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 and everywhere else.
I was going to say, there's a lot of negative space in movies that don't really have a lot of budget. This feels like it costs about as much as, you know, what Disney usually puts in for their marquee titles.
They were able to have some great little visual details. Also, when they go to the castle, the whole design of the castle, when you see it from a bird's eye view, and I talked about this during the first trailer, it looks like the compass on an old pirate map.
That is a very clever design.
And the humans themselves look great. I know we're in this era where we're getting stuff like the Bad Guys and Spider-Verse and the Mitchells and a new Puss in Boots film. But there's always something to be said with design team and a good art direction. And the art direction here looks good. The humans remind me of fully CGI versions of like humans you would see in those old pirate books.
They do. We have come a long way since Toy Story, where the humans look less realistic than the toys.
I like to look at the humans. I'm glad that we are just getting diverse looking CGI features still. I want studios to keep pushing the envelope and giving us stuff like the Bad Guys and what have you, but you still have to have a good story wrapped around it. And I don't think the visual look of this film would have worked if it went with like a Spider-Verse or the Bad Guys or Wish Dragon. It needed a more
grounded.
Yeah, even though that's really weird. This isn't grounded in a sense like a Robert Zemeckis motion capture film or those highly realistic or super realistic Love, Death, and Robots shorts. It's more like those stylized humans from the Love, Death, and Robots shorts. Like the one with the killer crab monster. Because they still have a very not super Disney look to the humans, but they're stylized. Captain Crow has like that square jaw look.
Bad Traveling.
That one. And it's more in that regards. The humans have a stylized look while there are still very realistic textures to like the skin, the clothes, the wood, to everything around them. And then they'll have these splashes of color, of vibrancy, like with red and blue, or the giant crab having this lovely purple tone to his shell. But it all works. It doesn't fall into that trap of like The Good Dinosaur, where the hyper realistic CGI backgrounds are then met with these super cartoony looking humans and dinosaurs. We're past that point now. We hit that point where we can have photorealistic backgrounds that we now need to just tweak just a little to make it mesh with everything else.
This definitely has like the most consistent styles of the characters and their environment.
It's a very gorgeous looking movie. Well, either way, whether you have a small or big budget, it's all how you resource it correctly. And they do a good job. They have basically 10 locations tops, a few islands, and mostly ocean shot. The music is fantastic. I love the music by
Mark Mancina,
who worked on stuff like Moana with Chris Williams. And I know a lot of people got How to Train Your Dragon vibes from it, but no, the music was not done by Hans Zimmer.
Or John Powell.
Yeah.
It sounds like those composers, and he does work for Zimmer's remote control productions. So stylistically, there is...
I find that humorous that it's just like, yeah, it has some of that Zimmer touch to it. And it's like, well, speaking of Zimmer, the voice cast is also very good. It's not the biggest cast, which I think helps. I mean, they definitely have like a good number of people behind everyone, but they do have like Dan Stevens as the military Navy captain who's super smug and like, I can take care of this while you hunters are outdated. He does a good job with that, even though he's not really in the movie a whole lot.
He's in it for just enough for like that particular scene.
We also have like Helen Sandler, Zana Tang, and Kathy Burke who show up as multiple different characters. And there are a few people who double or triple dip into like secondary characters. It was really interesting to see. It has a relatively small cast.
They didn't really necessarily choose celebrities. They just chose good actors.
Yeah, it reminds me of that conundrum that I forgot the article I read this on, but it was about how, what was it, like a few years ago, the Sisters Brothers, that Western with John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
Great movie, by the way. I highly recommend it. I think it's on Hulu, but you might have to look around. Digitally, I mean. The conundrum that the article brought up was with Hollywood, because of how Westerns are no longer the bread and butter like they were back in the day. You either have to, if you want a big budget, you have to get big names. Because if you are going to not pick big, well-known names, we'll say goodbye to that big budget.
It's unfortunate that is the case.
And that's what it feels like here. I'm curious to know how the budgeting worked. Like, did they go with the direction of not wanting a huge ton of big names and they just got actors who would fit the roles well? Or did they somehow work it to where they could still get a big budget and still have like one or two big names? Because the marketing for this film did not emphasize the cast. I don't know if you noticed that or not from the trailers. It was more about the big seafaring adventure aspect with the monsters and the sea ships going to battle. They didn't do like a last second in the trailer, like, here's all the actors that are in this movie.
As far as I know, Netflix doesn't really do that anyway. Netflix is kind of skimpy when it comes to actual marketing, but we've beaten that dead horse before.
Right. No, I'm glad it got a big, well-received screening at Annecy from a while back. I wish that everyone else in the US was able to see it like on a big theatrical screen again. I found that they fit tone pretty well. It's dark. It's definitely got more of an edge than most family films, but it still has very approachable elements. Like, if they wanted this to be a even more edge, they wouldn't have made blue look like the most adorable goop monster around. And we're getting some goop characters this year.
Strange World has like a lot of goop.
Well, especially that little blue one that you see. Like, it just reminded me of this little guy here that in blue and the Sea Beast. I like that they just had a good story of how they handled Captain Crow, just how he drove himself to be less human to try to take down the Red Bluster with that big, basically cannon that just shot a rocket-propelled spear.
One thing that I like about Captain Crow is that obviously because of his age and how much experience he's had as a hunter, I don't want to say he becomes the villain, but he's always kind of been morally gray, again, just through his own personal experience. So when he does start to lean more towards like the villainous side of things, it's not as jarring of a heel turn. It's more like desperate times call for desperate measures.
He does it because he thought that Jacob and Maisie were eaten. And I mean, considering what he saw and what happened, I don't blame him.
Me neither.
Because he's lost his humanity at this point. There is a villain, but it's a little more straightforward with the patriarchy and years of fear-mongering and propaganda that shaped the monsters to be the villains. You get why Crow is doing what he's doing. It's all in how you execute it and what kind of story you want to tell. And this wanted to tell a story that's very human, that's very grounded. And it's so weird to say it's grounded when there are, giant sea monsters and so on. And how they approach the designs of the sea monsters, where they essentially do like how people designed monsters back in the day before they were like, was this supposed to be a whale or something like that? Because it's like, they're like, oh, these things, they're creatures far and wide and fearsome and dangerous. And then you look and it's like, wonder what they were on back then. Also, this movie is 2 hours. When was the last time we saw a non-indie or foreign animated feature in the US that was actually 2 hours? It seems like with some companies, it's either 90 minutes or the absolute limit is 100 minutes.
I think the last time, as far as I can tell, Into the Spider-Verse is 117 minutes, which is like right up into the line.
Right. Same with the Sea Beast. It's basically like, I think 1 or 2 minutes off of being a full 120 minutes.
119 minutes.
Yeah, just a smidge. I like that. It lets the film take its time and have moments where the characters can breathe. They can have quiet moments. It's everything I talk about with animated films and why some of them should have a longer runtime if they can pace it out well.
It's paced like a live action film. In my Letterboxd review, I said this could have been told in live action, but the advantage of this being animation is you are free from all of the limitations, like the law of gravity and spending gobs of cash on either practical or digital effects. If you can create this all from scratch, you can tell just exactly the story that you need to without anything holding you back. Because some of these action scenes, I'm not sure how they would be able to pull them off in live action. No matter how good the stunt doubles are, no matter how good the digital effects are, it probably won't be as good as it is, told in animation.
Like making stuff in live action, especially if you want to go all out with physical props and sets and such, a lot of people want that, and I get it. I agree. It looks great when you can actually tell they're walking on something and not on a stage. That costs money, man. I'm just dreading how much money is going to be revealed of how that One Piece Netflix adaptation is coming out.
That one has me scared.
Because, you look at those pictures and the behind-the-scenes footage from the Geek Week release, and it's like, wow. They're putting a lot of money into this to have these big sets. And then it hits you, oh gosh, how much is this going to cost? They were committed in doubling down on making sets and props and such. With animation, you just have to have the right team, the right talent, the right studio, the right amount of production time. It's all time. It's all budget. It's all the talent and giving people the perfect amount to get it all done. People don't get that sometimes. Animation fans don't get that. I wish they started to understand that, because like, I think everyone at this point has seen that Dragon Ball Z fan film that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, man, this looks amazing. Why didn't the show look like this? And it's like, do you not know how torturous and awful anime productions are? Be lucky you get something that looks decent on an anime production, because I'm going through the summer 2022 season right now. Look up Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. Yikes. Something happened there. Production was not working there. In general, though, I don't really have a lot to say that could be considered negative for the Sea Beast. It could have paced itself a tiny bit more on certain areas. Like if this was a lesser film, I would have been bothered by the fact that it's like, so there's a sea witch that makes these horrible monstrosities and such. But the storytelling isn't about that. It's just saying like, hey, there are people out there that will try to take advantage of your grief and your anger and such by offering you something that you think you need, but you don't really need. It's just was handled well within its world build.
I was going to say, the character Gwen Batterby, she's just there to like give a character a thing. If this story was part of like a larger tapestry, we probably could have explored a little bit of what she does in greater detail. But the fact that we don't is fine, because it's not about her or what she does. It's really like a story about Jacob and Maisie embarking on this journey and how their minds are changed by their encounter with Red.
This film bucks a lot of traditional story elements that a lot of mainstream animated features seem to have like a checklist with. And sometimes a lot of these big productions have a lot of studio notes, and some are able to get away with less of them than others. But we don't get like a romantic interest with this film. I think that was really amazing. There is no romance in this movie.
Yeah, you could argue it's because there are no female characters on this ship that are even close to Jacob's age. But
well, it's not that. It's the fact that the romance aspect is it's symbolic. It's the idea of sailing the seven seas, fighting these monsters. That's the romance angle.
It's about a found family too.
Right. We're about to tackle a lot of films that are all about found families. It's very interesting how that story beat pops up.
Indeed.
But otherwise, I don't really have a lot else to say. I think the Sea Beast is fantastic. I am so happy that its reception has been so acclaimed right now.
Every time I see tweets from like non-animation Twitter handles saying like, oh my God, you guys, the Sea Beast is amazing. It's one of the best animated movies I've seen. I just get a huge smile on my face.
We need more films like the Sea Beast, more like variety. We need action adventure films that have more of an edge. We need slice of life films. We need everything. And we can have comedies. Comedies can still exist while we have all this variety.
The table is big enough for everyone. Like
the other studios just need to start contributing to that table.
Exactly.
And such. So we'll have to see where this goes. I hope this is a big hit. I want so many people to watch this movie. I want this to be a huge hit for not only Chris Williams and his team that worked on this, but for Netflix, because this is that film that does not deserve to be forgotten. And I know everyone was kind of weary because of how the previous Netflix animated feature that came out before this was Marmaduke, and that was just the worst. But it shows that like when a bunch of the right people get together in the right studio or distributor or streaming service gives them the okay to make something like this, you need to support it. Because the fact that more people are, I was going to be a little more dire about it because with the whole like, well, people still love nostalgia and properties and IP driven stuff. But 2022 has been kind of a weird year. One of the most successful films of the year on top of the big blockbusters are films like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which has no IP or brand recognition outside of A24. And that's neat to see. So who knows? Because a lot of people did not show up for Lightyear, which is a shame. I mean, I get it, but still.
At the end of the day, what we're starting to see, if we haven't seen it before, is that audiences will show up for just a good movie.
Right, or something enjoyable and such. So that's really it, because if they don't find a movie enjoyable, they're not going to show up. Or, bad marketing screws over a good film, or good marketing elevates a bad film. It's so chaotic, man. The film industry is so much chaos. But yeah, obviously, I recommend this film. It's my second favorite, but it might creep up into first. Well, I'm about to go see The Deer King, and, Inuo comes out next month as of recording this. So, man, 2022 is such a slaughter fest of a year for animation.
Sounds like August is going to just bury us in gold.
Well, we'll have to see. I hope so, because we still haven't gotten the stop motion film from Henry Selick. We still haven't gotten Del Toro's film. We still haven't gotten the Cartoon Saloon animated feature. We still have 5 months or so left.
Yeah, we have been spoiled so far in terms of like animated movies, and our next episode of Renegade Marquee is a mid-year roundup of all the movies that we've seen in the first half of 2022. Some of the films that I'll be talking about will be stuff we've talked about here because they just happen to be in my top 10. But like, guys, this year has been great so far. And
yeah,
I can't wait to see what else we have coming down the pike.
Right.
Which brings me to another cool surprise. My recommendation is one that got me really excited when a couple days ago I found out that The Spectacular Spider-Man is now streaming on Netflix. There was like no fanfare as far as I know. Like, I don't really keep up with everyone's kind of what's new on Netflix lists. This one threw me for a loop because for the longest time, for those who don't know, The Spectacular Spider-Man has not been available for any like major streaming service, and no, Crackle does not count. For a while, this was kind of hard to find unless you looked in not legal places. As far as I know, all 26 episodes are streaming on Netflix. And if you're a Spider-Man fan and you really want to see like some of the best iterations of these characters, definitely give this a watch.
Unfortunately for me, it came out during a time when I was not watching a lot of cartoons. So I missed this incarnation of Spider-Man, even though I recognize the art style and the people who worked on it.
The unfortunate history with the series is that it ended right around the time that Disney purchased Marvel Entertainment. That's one of the reasons why this show is so short-lived. It was only 2 seasons, 26 episodes total. When the next show premiered on Disney Channel, The Ultimate Spider-Man, I remember that being met with not too dissimilar from how Turtles fans kind of turned their nose at Rise just because it came out, directly after a beloved iteration of those characters. Granted, with Ultimate Spider-Man, it was a little bit later. This one premiered in 2012 versus when Spectacular ended in 2009. But still, the fact that show legacy is that it ended around the time that Disney purchased Marvel is a bit of a bittersweet ending.
Well, it was during that time period where there was a lot of promising and potential stuff coming out on Disney. Like there was that Tron CGI series, and I forgot his name, but the guy who made Megas XLR had a show on Disney. And right around the same time those came out, they had 1 season, they got canned, and then you're like, what happened? Oh, right. They bought Star Wars and Marvel. Now it's like, now we don't have to make new original action shows.
So you're talking about is Motor City.
Yeah. I mean, come on, man. Not every action show needs to be a superhero-related romp or a Star Wars-related experience. We still need the original stuff to balance it all out with the big recognizable brands and such, or else the world gets really boring. But still, I will be happy to check it out. I think there was like a Iron Man cartoon that also came out around the same time.
This is a very interesting time for Marvel animated properties.
Right. I know. I think that's what happened with the first Avengers cartoon from the 2010s. It was going really well. And then when Disney bought Marvel, they were like, can this version? and let's make our Avengers cartoon light, or quote unquote light, the more child friendly and family friendly, approachable version. Though even then, that show isn't all that bad. It's just a shame that the first version got canned. So for my recommendation, I've been going through the summer anime season, and I would love to say that the stigma of the summer anime seasons from these last few years being the worst is like an overreaction. I'm having a hard time, though, justifying how the summer season is not the worst season so far. I would have to have a really intense debate with someone who could do a proper, non-trolling, not joking around, intensely earnest and sincere thought process and conversation about someone saying that the summer 2022 anime season is good, because it's not. So many of the shows so far have been mediocre in terms of the new ones, and some of them have intensely problematic story beats. We will get to that when we round them up. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch a lot of the few good ones. I was going to recommend an isekai that's actually pretty solid, but if I was going to make a recommendation right now, I have to give it to the Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting. It's about a Yakuza hitman who is intensely violent, who is brought in by his boss to essentially watch over the boss's daughter, to be the bodyguard, to make sure she is taken care of and looked at after while the boss is doing his Yakuza stuff. If you like shows like Aharen is Indecipherable or Kotaro Lives Alone,
Ooh, yeah.
It has a bit of a vibe of the latter half. Like the first episode that's out as of recording this definitely wanted to juggle both comedy and drama. And I know some reviewers have said it doesn't quite balance out. I found that there was a lot of charm to the story of this one and the character dynamics. There are a ton of funny scenes, but there's also a lot of heartfelt moments. It's also just nice to see a Yakuza adjacent anime series that's actually animated well, because, you know, the last one we got from last year was Way of the House Husband. I'm never going to get over that adaptation. But the Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting still stands on its own. It has its own character dynamics, its own mood, and I really like it. It's definitely one of the better shows this season so far. So yeah, I definitely recommend the Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting. Well, that wraps everything up. We were going to do the Despicable Me retrospective, but some scheduling stuff came up, so that's why we are talking about the Sea Beast first.
Plus, I just really want to watch that movie as soon as possible.
The Sea Beast is, again, one of those films that just deserves all the support. But yeah, next time we will be talking about the Despicable Me franchise.
So until then, Cameron, where can everyone find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Cam's Eye View. I have my own website called camseyeview.biz, where I review animated films and shows from around the world called The Other Side of Animation. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/camseyeview. If you like my work and send some support my way, you can do it that way.
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Captain K42. You can check out my quick thoughts on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. You can check out Renegade Pop Culture on Facebook and Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. You can also find us on YouTube, Podchaser, The Banana Meter. Listen to all of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And last but not least, everything can be found at renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That'll do it for this episode of Renegade Animation. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.